name is Joe Salemi. I am the Product Marketing Manager with DynaSCAPE Software. Today is the first in a 6-part webinar series for the Serious Landscape Designer. We have Patrick Duchesne from Duchesne Design Solutions on the line. Patrick, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. And thanks for your help in putting together this series. So for everyone joining us today, Patrick and I have worked on the content and putting this webinar series together to show the recommended workflow and some helpful tips along the way so that you can be more efficient and more productive and getting more design work out in the time that you have. Because the one thing you can't create more of is time. And so what we're trying to do throughout this whole webinar series is try and help you maximize the amount of time you have in your day. So Patrick is the owner of Duchesne Design Solutions. He runs a remote landscape design business. He has clients all over the United States and a couple in Canada. And I am the product marketing manager for DynaSCAPE. I handle all of the product direction for DynaSCAPE Design, Color, Sketch 3D, and Manage 360. I also sit on the board of directors for the Association of Professional Landscape Designers. In 2 weeks, we have one of the largest industry events in Louisville, Kentucky. It is the Green Industry Expo and Landscapes 2016. So if you're planning to be in Louisville, please stop by and see the team of DynaSCAPE at the trade show. So before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. So all 6 webinars are going to be recorded, and all the recordings are going to be posted to the DynaSCAPE website. So, you know, if you couldn't have joined us today, or for some reason you have to leave in the middle, don't worry, because we are recording, and we are going to post this to the DynaSCAPE website. And as soon as we get off the air today, I'll be posting the video shortly after, and I'll email everyone the link. So please don't worry if you can't join us for the entire thing. And we're going to have some time at the end for some question and answers. So there's a questions box in the control panel for GoToWebinar. Type all your questions in there, and we're going to try to get to them all. It's going to be hard to get to all the questions, but we'll do our best in the time that we have, and if we can't, then I'll get Patrick to answer them, or I'll answer them, depending on the question, and we'll send out the answers in the email that I send out later. So that question box is in the control panel for GoToWebinar, and a little bit of an outline of today's webinar. So today is all about getting ready to start drafting, and it's an important step because, you know, there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to get to the point where you start creating your outdoor living space. So in this webinar, we're going to be looking at the site survey and the plot map, doing site measurements, impervious coverage guidelines, site photos, what constitutes good and bad ones, job budgets and costs. We're going to look at different computers and ergonomics for setting up your workstation, file organization, because that's extremely important in your productivity, and setting up your drawing in your CAD software. And our CAD software of choice is DynaSCAPE Design. Patrick, I think at this point, I'm going to hand it off to you, and I'm going to give you control of the screen, and you're going to take us through our great webinar series.
Sure. Just waiting to be able to, there we go.
Handing it over.
Okay. You see my screen now, Joe?
Yep, can definitely see it.
Good. Okay. So welcome everybody to the first webinar. We haven't done one in a while, and Joe and I have kind of spent a lot of time over the last few months trying to figure out what we wanted to do, and our goal, or our idea, was to do more of a series now rather than just kind of tidbits about things that support would suggest to me to do and Joe would suggest to me to do. And one of the ideas we had was to do kind of like a real-time time-lapse like watching me do a design from start to finish to see how I do things. But then Joe kind of had the idea of, let's do more of like a breakdown of the processes of how you actually get started to get into a drawing and how the software can help people like hand renderers, which is going to be a really neat webinar. I think it's the next one. And that's going to be great, helping hand rendering designers transition into CAD software, which is what I did. So Joe showed you the outline. I'm going to go through those items, and I'm going to try my hardest not to really over-embellish things, which sometimes I think I can probably end up doing because I have so much passion for this, and I love doing this. But there will be time to do questions at the end. So if I didn't cover anything, please ask us questions so I can help. So at trade shows, we get to meet a lot of users, and we hear a lot of great things. We hear some bad things about practices that designers are doing that we feel could be a lot more streamlined and efficient, and that's really what I'm all about. I run a business where I have another designer kind of on staff, and he does about 40 hours a week of design work for me, and it's all about productivity, and it's all about creating really great-looking drawings and presentations for clients so they can take those and sell them. So there's multiple types of users in this webinar right now. There are designers, ones that are designing for a landscape company. You're working in-house. There are designer sales, which you're actually going in and meeting clients, and you're doing the measurements, and you're getting all the background for a company. And then there are probably several of you like me who are doing design work, freelance, or maybe doing it part-time for homeowners and landscape contractors. And we all have something in common. Yeah, we're all designers, but we need information to do our jobs. And the information that we're given is crucial to how well we're actually able to execute a drawing accurately and efficiently and on budget to where our clients, whether it's our company we work for or a contractor, is able to take what we've produced and turn that into a sale and turn it into dollars. And in the end, that helps us all justify our existence, because if our drawings don't sell, there's really not a lot of use for us, is there? So the first thing I want to go over is the site survey and plot map information. So surveys, everybody knows what a survey is. A survey is the information that's been done by a professional surveyor that tells us where the property lines are, where the house is, existing conditions, topographic information. That's such a crucial thing to get, and it is a little surprising how many people I do talk to who don't ask for these surveys. And, you know, sometimes you do get things when you don't ask for them, but oftentimes you don't get things when you don't ask for them. And a survey is a very important thing to get. It can really help you save a lot of measuring time. And one good way of getting a survey from a client. Now, I do understand that there are some parts of the country, some of my clients I work for have no problem getting surveys. New Jersey, Virginia, some of these very kind of regulated areas. But then other areas, some clients don't even know what a survey is. They've never even seen one before. However, when you are proposing to do a design for somebody, hopefully you're charging for your designs, which is a whole different conversation. But if you are charging for your designs, when you inform your client that their design will cost more money if they cannot produce a survey, it amazed me how quickly people just out of the blue were able to find their survey. So it's not a scare tactic. However, it is a good way to kind of nudge somebody into helping you out a little bit, because measuring is one of the most boring parts, in my opinion, of the job. So the more we can reduce that, the better. So just because you have a survey doesn't mean you're off and running. This is a client in Michigan that I requested a survey for. They wanted a nice patio and outdoor living space on the lakeside. So here's the lake, and this is the survey I received. That really does not help me very much. So technically they gave me a survey. Now, in their defense, this is all they were given from their client. So, you know, they can only do so much. So I asked them to please get me either dimensions or a better survey. So what they did was they contacted their client. They organized, you know, they collected the money from them for a survey. I don't know what it was, $500 or something. It's not outrageous to have a survey done. They had a survey done, and this was very helpful for me. So now I could really go off of this. There's still some things that are really not great in here. I mean, you can tell that this is a hand-rendered survey, and there are things that aren't really displayed as far as the width of this area here, how deep the deck is. Those would really be nice to have. Now, I can scale this based on the scale in software, or if you magnify it on a printer or whatever, but you want to really be careful when you get these surveys to not completely go off of the information that you're given, because especially with hand surveys, it's not to say that a CAD generated survey is going to be accurate too, because that's definitely not the case. But when I see things like this, where there's just little hash marks and incomplete line segments, and this is a really bad, goofy curve here, we want to get out in the field and verify this. Really, some of the most important parts of this is just where these pins are on this property. That's so crucial as far as if you're going to be installing a fence, or if you're doing a pool installation and your town has a requirement of setbacks as far as the water's edge to the property line. You know, that could be 20 feet, it could be 25 feet. You don't want to be guessing through your way. You don't want to be guessing your way through the design, because I'm telling you, if something comes back and it's not right, you know whose fault it is. It's going to be ours. It's not the surveyors, unless they give us bad information. But we need to figure these things out in the field. This is a wonderful, wonderful survey. Has the graphic scale, which everybody who asks for a survey or a plot map, encourage them to put a graphic scale on it, because this graphic scale travels with the reduction in the increasing size of the drawing. Now, the second thing you want to look at on a really good survey are things like this. The length of this property, 435 feet from this pin over to this pin. And then, you know, look through several dimensions. Once we get, it'll be the next webinar, I will show you how we bring these surveys into our drawings. And it's a very simple process, but we need written or graphical dimensions on our survey so we know exactly what something should measure. So when we bring it into software and we assign this distance, everything is accurate. And at this point, we can trace things. Now, you can't verify a whole survey like this. It's going to kill you. But when you are out measuring the site, hopefully you have this with you on your first appointment if you ask for it up front. And that's something that when somebody calls in to set an appointment, that's one of the questions that you or your receptionist should be asking. Would you please be able, or would you be able to, no, well, not would you be able to, would you please email us a copy of your survey prior to meeting with you so we have the right information when we're out in the field. And if you have time, there's some really important information that you need to be able to know right when you're there. For example, this area here on this survey, it's a big detention basin. Or let's say that's the septic field. And if you have a client that's asking for things when you meet them on the appointment, if you've looked at this survey already, you're going to have a good idea of what you're capable of doing and what you're not capable of doing, and you can what's the word? You can put those to bed right away. Like, I know you want to do a pool here, but we can't put a pool on a septic field. That would not be a very fun experience. So do a little homework up front, get some of this information, and I really encourage you to take these surveys, do a base sheet. You don't need to trace everything, but trace everything that's going to be helpful when you go do your site measurements, the house, the walkways, the driveways, the property lines, any utilities that are marked on here, and take it a step further and float this on some type of a grid paper, which I think I did one of those in my webinar. It's called a grid-based grid map. I can't remember what I called it. And that'll help you measure even better when you've got nice square grids with some dimensioning on there for you to be able to make a decent-looking drawing when you get back to the office. So this is great. The last thing I'm going to say about surveys is, if you live in an area where where you live in a pretty strict town with a lot of permit requirements, you're going to need to, in most cases, submit this survey. Like when I lived in New Jersey, I had to overlay what we were going to be doing directly on the survey. So when they did the whatever they do, approval process, they could see exactly where the work's being done and how it affects adjacent things and where it sits on the property. So that's enough about surveys. Try to get them. If you can't get them, see if maybe you can have one done. There's a time and a place for a survey. You don't need a survey if all you're doing is doing some planned installations for somebody. But if it gets really complicated, where numbers are really complicated as far as linear feet of borders and walls and patio things, it's really, you don't want to be affecting your pricing, your materials, then you may want to think about that. So that's surveys. So that goes into the next topic, which is site measurements. So if you can create a base plan with a survey, or maybe you can get a decent even Google Earth image, which I'm not a big proponent of creating base sheets to work off of with a Google Earth image, because there's way too much variance. There's way too much that can be off with that. So, but at least you can get something to sort of go by. So measurements. You take your survey with you on some kind of a base sheet. Then you can start kind of confirming what's right, what isn't right. Here's an example of some site measurements I was given by a client that I could really not do much of anything with, and you'll see why. These were all tree locations. She did a wonderful job telling me how far away from the seawall these trees were, but left to right, I have no idea how far apart these trees are from one another. So this is one I had to send back to her and say, okay, this is good, but now give me dimensions between these trees, and that completely cleared that up. This is one that's kind of on its way. It was a really good start. I was able to get quite a bit done. However, you see things on here like the propane tank. It's 9 feet away from the house. That's good. But how big is the propane tank? How far off of the corner is the propane tank? Up here on the driveway, she did a great job telling me it's 291 inches long from this point to this point. But I have no idea how far out this is here. Joe, can you see the little hand moving around on the screen?
Sure can.
Oh, good. Cool.
Yep.
All right. So I have no idea how far out this curve is. I don't know how far this area or from here. So she started to do that, where I know that this porch is 96.5 inches deep, and she gave me these tick marks. But there's so much other variation that can happen here. So when you're doing these things, use corners to your benefit or to your advantage. Run these tick marks out, and you don't have to do it in an ideal world. You can run one from this corner, run one from this corner, and then run one from the center point, and then you can just kind of extrapolate from there how that works and get it pretty darn close. So here's a dimension that, oh yeah, 58 feet, so I got that. But like, I have really no idea if the driveway stays consistent. So there's some great stuff here, but there's a lot of things still missing too. This is pretty obvious that I kicked this one back because I had no idea what was going on, and this one really doesn't even deserve much discussion. That was a pretty difficult one to read. This is awesome. Look what the guy's done. Now, there's really no rhyme or reason for what these blocks signify as far as dimension, but look what this grid paper allows you to do. You're able to create a nice square dimension plan for yourself, so when you go back to the office, it actually looks like what it's supposed to be. And there were way too many times I went out and measured stuff, and we've all been there where we're measuring a site, and then we run out of paper, and then we make a little arrow, and then we put it onto the next sheet. And then when we get back to the office, we have no clue what in the world any of this is, because we had 2 or 3 or 4 more appointments after that. So some of it is just discipline, to take the time to get these drawings done the right way, and part of that is, part of that starts with appointment scheduling. Don't schedule these appointments 30 minutes apart, 45 minutes apart. Like, you're not a puppy mill. You know, you want to take the right amount of time with each customer to efficiently get as much information as you possibly can on the first visit, to do as complete of a drawing or an estimate as you can. And there are going to be times where you have to go back and verify things. You're never going to, you're always going to forget something along the way. But if you can get 80 or 90% through a drawing, and then you have to go stop over and verify something or make sure something works or it jives, that's good. So this is pretty darn good. So here are a few shortcomings, though. I don't know how long this wall is. I don't know how long this wall is. So then what I did was I turned this on my iPad into this, and I kicked it back to him. So any of you designers who, your boss, maybe it's a smaller company, and the owner is going to look at appointments and measuring, or if there is a salesperson that you designed for at the company and they're getting measurements, do not be afraid to do this and kick it back to them, because, pointing fingers is not a very fun game, and it's not a good, it doesn't really, it's not a good culture in any company or anywhere. However, when we are producing drawings that need to be estimated and they need to be constructed, and there's profit involved, there's time involved, there's productivity involved, there's crew leaders involved, there's a lot of moving parts that stem from these drawings. You have to get these things as accurate as possible. And so you do not want to be looking at this and then on another screen looking at pictures and trying to guess what that wall length is, because if you're off, that's gonna domino effect all the way down the job. Your materials are going to be off. Your time will be extended. Your profits will be less. There's all kinds of consequences. So, I mean, there's definitely a diplomatic way of saying this. I mean, for this one, you'd say, look, this is really good. I was able to get a lot done, but there are a couple things here I need to make sure that we're accurate because I'm guessing on this. And what happens if you're firm about it and you're consistent about it, whoever is doing these measurements with you will get better because nobody wants to have things kicked back to them to have to go do things again. And if it takes you having to go with your person who's measuring on an appointment or two to help measure, then that's what you do. And you show them what things that you are really looking for that helps make your job a lot easier. And I know that some businesses don't like designers really out in the field much. They want them stuck in the office doing drawings. However, designers and salespeople and business owners have a lot of times their brains are wired very differently. Designers have very specifically wired brains, and we need things done a certain way to be able to do what we need to do that perhaps your boss or a salesperson just doesn't understand. And you know what? As long as they understand it enough to get your information, that's fine. They don't need to know how to do what you do for a living, but they need to get you the right information. So don't be afraid to kick these things back, or if you have the opportunity to just shoot out to a job on your own to verify things, maybe you do that too. Jump in a company vehicle and tell your boss, listen, I don't want Jim or Sarah or whoever to have to spend an hour to go out and measure these walls when they could be selling or they could be managing a job. I'm gonna run out, I'll do this, and I'll bring you back coffee and donuts, and you'll be glad I went. So make it something, throw something in there for them. So that is measurements. Spot elevations. I'm going to just go over this really quick, and then I want Joe to jump in after I go over this little drawing here about a really clever tool that I know some of you haven't heard of, some of you have used, but I wanted to kind of introduce it a little bit. This was really slick, what this customer did. Not only is this an incredible survey with every little nook and cranny done as far as the length of the wall, but he did this. I don't know what this grid is, but this is 23 feet. These look like 10-foot grids. He did these 10-foot grids, and then he gave me all these spot elevations because this yard sloped from the driveway way down. And so what this enabled me to do is know really how the undulation of this house works. And once you get proficient with the software, with DynaSCAPE software specifically, because that's what we're going to be going over in the next few weeks, you can take your drawing and you can sit it right on top of this grid, and it'll tell you what's going on, where you need steps, where you need to cut, where you need to fill. So this is awesome. It's very elaborate, and this client of mine is a very detail-oriented person. So some of these I didn't need, but it's the thought that counts. So if you can get these done as accurately as you can with these grids, it's very, very helpful. And then you're not looking at pictures guessing, okay, if I stood here and I'm 5'9", where's my head going to be? How many steps do I need? And I know some of you might be laughing because you've done the exact same thing, or you're counting bricks to see how many steps you're going to need or whatever. So, Joe, I want you to tell them about the zip level.
So we're not trying to push product on anybody, but
Right.
A personal favorite tool of mine is the zip level. And if anyone joining us today is familiar with it or uses it, you'll know exactly why. So for those that are not familiar with it, the zip level is a device that one person can use on their own, and in a relatively decent size site, whether it be residential or commercial, You can go and shoot all of your spot elevations on your own. And so, you know, the unit that I think it's a zip level 2000 has a 100-foot line, and from the 0 point, you can do elevations 20 feet above or below the center point and to a 100-foot radius. And each spot elevation you take, you can save into the unit. And so when you go back to the office, generally what you would do is when you take a spot elevation, you'll mark that down on a base map and keep going. But the unit will save that measurement for you, so you can go back and take a look in the order that you took those measurements. Super helpful. We haven't been able to integrate with it yet, but that's something that our team is working on. But if you haven't used one, I would recommend you go out and borrow one from someone and test it out. Go and buy one. The Zip Level 2000, I think, is $899 US, and probably one of the best investments for doing site analysis that you can do.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I got to use one a few weeks ago on a site visit in Michigan, and I wish to God that they had those things when I was doing it, because it would have been so much easier than carrying that big stick all over the place.
Yeah, so
all right.
basically what it is an altimeter, right? So, you know, in your smartphone, you have a sensor in there. You have an altimeter in there, but it's nowhere near as accurate as a zip level. The line inside for the zip level is actually filled with a pressurized gas. So every 3 years it should be serviced by the factory. So you send it in, they service it and send it back to you. They change the battery and the whole thing. But the accuracy is good to a hundredth of an inch. So, you know, you're dead on every single time.
Yeah. All right, cool. So let's keep moving. 2:30, and I want to make sure I get through everything. So the next extremely important part of this is lot coverage. So, all right, so we've gotten all of our information. We're back in the office. We want to start kind of, well, actually, no, we're not in the office yet. But this is a very important piece of information. And it's really funny, the other day I was looking for impervious coverage restriction things, and a lot of them were from New Jersey, which was pretty funny because that's just the way it is. So what is impervious coverage? It says it right here, but in layman's terms, it's how much impervious stuff you can put on a site, your house, your driveway, anything that does not absorb water. Even pools. A lot of towns consider pools impervious. Even though they're collecting water, they still consider it against your coverage. Some don't. So why is this important? Because in certain areas, you're only allowed to cover so much square footage of your property. And you need to know this before you even start drawing. And if you're really conscientious and you have the time, you can go armed with this information so you can inform your client, like, we only have 800 square feet left, or we only have 2,000, whatever it is. So the things they're asking you to do are going to be directly controlled in some areas of the country by these restrictions. Now, where I lived in Branchford, New Jersey, I could have put a parking lot in my backyard and they didn't care. 10 minutes away up the road, there was, I can't remember what it was, 20 or 25% coverage or something like that. So just down the road, it can be affected. So simply said, make sure you know how much more stuff you can put on a property before you even start doing it, because the last thing you want to do is present a drawing, your client falls in love with it, they've given you a non-refundable deposit, and if you do like some companies do, instead of taking that deposit and setting it aside and not spending it, you've spent the deposit and then you put in for the permit and you find out that a lot of things that you just proposed you're not allowed to do. That's one of those moments where in college you woke up and you realized you forgot you had a test. It's a bad feeling, and you don't want to deal with it because then you have to really let down a client, and then you have to retool, and all of your time was in vain because you made some mistakes. So make sure you know what you're allowed to do on a site. So when you're on a site, actually, I wanted to show you what kind of this, they armed us with all the information for the town, letting them know that, look what this did. Total square feet over 30% allowable was 930. So they told me in this drawing, it's okay, we're going to go for a variance, you can go over. So this is a very impressive, I'm not patting myself on the back, but this is a very impressive presentation for you to be able to give the town, because you've done a lot of the work for them, and it shows that you're on top of things, you're not trying to slide under the radar, and you want to do things the right way. And I'm telling you, when you do the right thing and you follow the guidelines, what they want, you're going to have a very much better relationship with them, getting approvals done quicker. It's just a whole better experience. As soon as they find out you're trying to do something that you're not supposed to, there's a target on your back, and they're going to make life a living you-know-what because you tried to pull a fast one. So do the right thing, do your homework, find out what you're allowed to do, and try to stick within those guidelines. There are some creative ways to get around these things, like rain gardens and all kinds of stuff. But it's happening more and more all over the country, too. So a lot of you already know what I'm talking about. Okay, site photos. I won't take too much time on site photos, but there is a real art for taking site photos. And this is one of the biggest things I struggle with some of my clients, getting the right photos so I can feel like I'm there. I don't get to see these sites unless I go to a few clients I get to kind of regularly meet or see, but I don't really get to be at these. So I need the best representation so I can kind of be in that area and feel like I'm there, so I can design it like it should be designed. So this looks like a silly example, but this is really a nice photograph because this tree is going to be here, the garage. So if my client sent me a dimension to this tree from that corner, like I can see the relation of this to the garage. If he only gave me a dimension, if he only gave me one away from the garage without giving me any laterals, like how far away from the adjacent tree or the street or wherever, left to right, I at least can get this thing pretty darn close. And then that's one of those things that you could stop and just verify. Now, I wouldn't go verify this tree because it has nothing to do with anything we're doing. So it's really just it's more just making it look like the drawing is accurate. This is another really good one. And this is one I asked them to go back and take about 2 weeks ago. I was designing a driveway, and I had some photos of the front, but the survey wasn't great here, and I wanted to really know how far out this little landing was from this garage door, because that's a really crucial piece of where this drive is going to come out in relation to this and how that's going to affect the car pulling out. So taking these photos that help line things up can really make a big difference. If you do have to go off of a photo every once in a while, you can get it to where it's, you know, if I had to wing this, I could probably get it within a 4 to 6 inch level degree of accuracy if I didn't have a dimension. But if it's a site that was close enough to them, that would be on one of my little things of, hey, if you're around the area, can you just measure this out from here to here, or can you measure how these line up? Because, again, those tiny little steps of verifying a couple little things can make a huge, huge difference. This is awesome. This is great. I can do a lot of things with this. I can, if that deck wasn't there, I could figure out where the threshold of this door was by, well, not completely here, but going along siding and seeing how high up something is above this one compared to this, this siding. If I'm going to 3D model this, I see all the windows. I can get it pretty darn close. So this really gives me a great representation of this job, and this actually is that drawing that I was showing you with the spot elevations where it dropped. So you can see why it was so important for him to get me all those elevations, because we had a patio here, we had steps and a walkway, we had more steps and a walkway, and then a patio. So his elevations gave me a great idea. So this is awesome. This is not. I don't know why this picture was ever taken, but I guess to show me that there's a well or whatever. The marigolds are doing great, even though they look like they're in shade, but I have no clue where this is on the property. So this is one that I would just delete out of the folder and ask, where is this? And where are the dimensions? So that's not really great. This I wanted to show you. I need to do a drawing for this one where the deck is going to stay, but I need to do a walkway around the side, and then we're going to do a patio with a fireplace into the hillside. But I want to show you what pictures I was sent. I'm going to jump back and forth. Those are it. I have no idea what half of this backyard looks like. I see that and I get it. I see this and but you can see where I have no clue what's going on here, and I was sent this last Wednesday and I haven't started the drawing because I kicked it back and said I can't do anything with this because I don't know if there's a tree here. I don't know if there's a well. I don't know. So don't be pressured into doing a drawing for somebody when you don't have the right information, because it's basically like getting in your car and going on a trip and having no clue where you're going, and then you're just hoping you get close. That's not it. So this is when we kick it back and say, okay, cool, I'm glad you were there, but can you get me some more photos? And again, this is a learning experience with communicating with you and whoever's getting these pictures, or just disciplining yourself to get a lot. So for this little project, I probably would have gotten 10 pictures, standing in the back, looking down, looking at this up, looking from side to side, getting some, I have no clue. I mean, the survey says that there were 3 air conditioners here, but I don't know if there are still anymore. So you need to get a lot of good photos so you can confirm what a survey says. So job scope. This is where the really nitty-gritty stuff starts to happen here. This is something a customer sent to me, which I absolutely love. So detailed, and it's a breakdown of everything that they want. Now, this is something that they actually did the drawing. They did a sketch, actually labeled pretty darn well, and then I just take their drawings and I pretty them up in DynaSCAPE. I label and color them and send them back. But it's a very good detail of, swing on the back right corner of the pool deck. See the attached picture, and they sent me that. I have a very good roadmap of what I need to do for this job. This is one where when I'm speaking with a client, you want to get in a good practice of this, especially if you're working in an office, or if you do something like what I do where you're dealing with customers over the phone. Open up Microsoft Word or Note or whatever you're using on a Mac or a PC, talk with them, and get all the information, type it up in a document, and save it. So on the phone talking with them, I put all of these things that I needed to do for the job because I can't, designers, I think we're all pretty good at remembering things like this because we're very good at conceptualizing. And it's like once we conceptualize what that looks like with what somebody's saying, we're good at going back to that memory of what that looks like. So I think that's a pretty good gift that we're given. But there are details like existing dry laid wall and stairs. I don't even know what that means. But especially when they go over materials, what are we going to use? Materials can dictate a lot of things. Are we using steps with a 24-inch tread on them? Are we using block with casts or pull bullnose or whatever? So arm yourself with the information that when you have the survey, you have good measurements and pictures, you have the good, in school they called it the program, where they would hand us out the sheet that says they want this and this and this and this, and we had to follow the guidelines, and that's how we being graded. This is the program. This is like when we learned in school, where we were given the guidelines of what we had to do, and if we take good notes and we address all of these issues and we do it correctly with good design skill and forethought and designing correctly, we're going to do our jobs right. So kind of tied to this, the next part of this conversation with your client has to be like budget. And I kind of don't like the word budget. And everybody probably has different, I know everybody has different ways of getting how much money a customer can spend or willing to spend. But I don't believe in saying what's your budget. And I'm not saying that I'm right all the time. I'm not saying I know everything. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that can say what's your budget and they can get it. But when I'm approached by somebody that says, what's your budget? And I'm spending money on something I had no idea. Like I had to get, we need some air conditioning work in my townhouse, and I had somebody here to look at it. He didn't ask me what I wanted to spend because he just gave me a price. But if he had said, what's your budget? Like, my budget means nothing because I don't know what it takes to fix this. So what I had better luck with was listening to what your customer tells you they want, maybe in the conversation guiding them to a direction that you think is the right way to do it, the smart way to do it, and an affordable way to do it where it's not going to, scare them away or whatever. And once you digest all that, that's where you say, okay, now we need to talk about where we're going to be with numbers. What you're telling me to do all this, I am figuring this is going to be in the 50 to 65 range or 50 to 70 range, 50,000 to 70,000. That's to do it right. That's to do the permits, whatever it's finished, the sites are stored. Like, is that a number that you kind of had in your head for this to be? And that's where you just need to sit and you need to just try to read them. You're either going to get a deer in headlights look where they thought this could be 10 grand or 10,000 because they had no idea, which that's fine. Some people don't have an idea. Or you're going to get the old, and this is good when you get it, when they say, yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking. We were hoping to be closer to like 40 or 50, but if it looks right and it's nice, like show us what looks good. If they say we really thought this was going to be like in the 20 or 30, or this is what we have to spend, that's where you need to retool and say, okay, if you want to do that, here are some things that we're probably going to need to do to get you to the number, and what we could try to do if you wanted to maybe do that and then save money over the next 2 or 3 years, we could try to phase this out a little bit, and we can design it to where we can phase it and estimate it to where we can phase it out too. So people aren't always willing to give out that number, but when you tell them, here's what I would say. I'd say, this is not for me to try to rip you off. This is so I can maximize my design time for you, and I can maximize your dollar. So if I know where you need to be for $30,000, I'm going to try to do the most I can do for you so you're happy with it, and you're happy with us, and you like our work, and you'll tell people about us, and you don't feel like somebody just tried to come in and charge you $30,000 and you put a boulder in the yard with 6 marigolds. I don't know why I said marigolds, probably because I'm still thinking about that picture. But that's really one of those conversations. You have to be just yourself and try not to sound scripted and try not to sound like a typical salesman, because customers read that so easily. And, you know, you watch presidential debates and vice presidential debates, and they've found that most people think those delegates who debate, the winners are the ones who present themselves better and who speak clearer and are, it's their mannerisms. It's not always what they say, it's how they say it. So there's a real way to get through to this budget number. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but it's so crucial, because that, in addition to these guidelines that they've given you, that tells you exactly what you need to do in a drawing. I have seen so many designers that don't do well in sales because, unfortunately, their creativity gets the best of them. And, you know, I think at least when I was in school, one of the problems with how I was taught in school was they said, there's no budget, use whatever plants you want from this catalog or whatever, and just make it look great. Okay, that's great for drafting practice and reading through a nursery book, but I don't really remember many times where somebody said, don't worry about budget, do whatever you want. That doesn't happen. And if somebody says that, I'd don't know, I'd be a little bit skeptical.
You feel it's a little bit suspect, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you know, it's like when somebody walks into a car dealership and says, like, my uncle was a car salesman, and he said the people that never bought cars were the ones that walked in and said, who wants to sell a car today? He said, you never sell cars to people like that. So that's that about that part. But make sure you know how much money you're designing to, so you don't show up to somebody's house and give them something great and beautiful, but it's outside their budget or it's over the top, because you're just going to turn them off. And that first impression of your presentation and how you come to them the first time, that's very difficult for them to get that bad taste out of their mouth, unless it was a situation where you met with the wife or the husband and alone, and they give you kind of false expectations of what was going on, and then you get the very awkward experience where the husband and wife are arguing and you want to just step out, so you don't know what to do with yourself. So which gets into really trying to get both people at the meetings together. But you know what? A thought is, if you meet with one and not the other, maybe you could do a follow-up email to both of them and say, okay, thanks for meeting. Here's what I took from the meeting. Here's what I'm going to use to do this project. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. That might put out a couple big presentation fires right there where the husband says, whoa, we're not doing a pool, or we're not doing this, or we're not doing that. That could really save you some headache. So the next subject is probably the most fun part of the job, at least for me, and that is, well, let's go file organization. I'll keep my favorite for almost the last part. File organization. I'll just really go over this briefly because I've done it in a webinar, but there is a really important part of this, which is keeping files organized and not having a million files all over your desktop. Your desktop should pretty much look like this, like nothing. It's so clean. Everything that you want to get to, you can click this button and it's all here. So this is a job folder. Here's an example of a job folder. Befores, drawings, plants, scans and surveys. If you're going to do a 3D modeling job, you will have 3D. And then in there, you might have a folder called renders. And the key to, or not the key to this, the objective here is to quickly find your information. So this, I think this is an actual folder from somebody I just copied over. So these are the before pictures they sent to me. That's fine. These are pretty darn good photos. I was able to do everything from these job photos. Then he sent me a survey. Pretty darn good. I love when they do this. This guy's great. He writes these little bullet points. One, pull the walkway down further from whatever in the front, and gives me this little cheat sheet right on the survey. It has dimensions, a little picture of the house. I don't have the address on there, but I can Google Earth it once I call and get the address. But that's great. It's got some information on there. Let me get out of this. I never use this photo viewer. Let's see. So that was the survey. The drawing. So here was the drawing I did for that project. Based off, I think there's the walkway that was pulled down. Plant pictures, right from DynaSCAPE. Functionalities right there. This is kind of a custom font that I made. I think it looks pretty cool. Check this out. In the folder, what he sent me, let's see where that picture was. No, not there. I thought I had it. Maybe it's in the fours. No, oh well. He sent me a photograph of, where's my drawing? He sent me a photograph of a job that he did in the past. And he wanted his customer to see that. So I loaded that on the job, on the drawing. I did a little clip art action here, which I'm going to show you guys. I think it's in webinar, I don't remember, one of 4, 5, or 6, but something about presentations, how to make it look really nice. But that he sent me and I put in the folder so I could put that on the drawing. And I knew exactly where it was. And then plants. So here's the plant packet. Again, this is a functionality of the software that a lot of these are just my own pictures that I used in here. But there's the plant packet. And then in that same folder, I don't really put plant pictures on drawings anymore because a lot of clients are kind of saying they don't like it because it kind of clutters the drawing, which is fine with me because it saves me work. However, these are the JPEG images that I cropped from a PDF, converting it from a PDF that if you look at like these images and then you look at the drawing, all I did was I brought those two packets right in here, drew a box, did the clip art. That's in a webinar too. Not in webinar 2, but a webinar also. So file organization, make sure you put things where they belong. Have a couple really, there's the picture, not in the right folder, so that should go up here somewhere. Hardscape. Here are a lot of pictures I'll use in jobs. I'll use some of these maybe even in textures. You can bring this into SketchUp, or you could bring this into DynaSCAPE Color to use as a real texture. You can float pictures like this on a drawing to show somebody what a running bond looks like, which is really nice because a running bond, something like this, is not a very easy thing. It's not hard to do in DynaSCAPE. It's a little time consuming, and I think it's a little bit too much work for what you're trying to do. So it's better to just throw a picture on the drawing, say, here's what it is, and there's your, whatever those are, 4x8 border, those are maybe 6x9s, I don't know. Whatever they are, pretty cool picture to show somebody that's what a charcoal border looks like against a sandstone walk with a random pattern, and here's what our fixtures will look like, and there's probably some of the healthiest begonias I've ever seen. Those are some hardscape images. Plant images. Start making this folder. This is a folder of plant images that I've saved for I don't know how long. I know that DynaSCAPE uses the horticopias. Some are good, some aren't so good. but you don't have to use them. You can use your own. So you go find the best.
Hey, Patrick, we just released, we just did an update, and so we partnered with Proven Winners, and so we've got all the woody ornamentals in the online plant database now.
Oh, good, good.
So they have incredible photos.
Good. So that's a positive move. So we'll get some even better photos, maybe some more current kind of stuff. But have photos of your own, because here's a good example. I think in Hortopia, when you look at a Serbian spruce, it's like 35 or 40 feet tall. And you might see a Serbian spruce that's that tall in an arboretum that's 25, 35 years old. But most of the time in landscape, well, they're not going to get like that. So you want to kind of, we all know what forced views are. Think of your photo images as forced views. And for the life of me, I don't see my Serbian spruce. It's probably because I'm not in. So I'd rather show them something like that. Shows them the kind of the grayer needles on the underside of the branching and everything. So you show somebody a 30 or 40 foot Serbian spruce, they're going to croak and think, what are you putting this in my yard for? So these are crucial. Try to give people plant packets so they don't go on Google and look at goofy pictures of things that somebody took and really does not flatter that. So, and you know what? I would tell my customers, don't even go on Google, because there's so much stuff out there that's not realistic of what I want to show you and what's applicable to your project. Let me show you what we're going to do. And then like textures. Here's some brick. This is something you can use if you're doing a porch in DynaSCAPE color, or you can use it in SketchUp. Actually, I think that's from SketchUp. But fabrics, I've used things like this in DynaSCAPE color, where on seat cushions, this is a really nice like seat cushion color or something. This is like a tile, whatever. Keep all these things really well organized so you can show people what they're going to look like. You can float them in clip art, whatever. So that's file organization. Whatever you're going to, and most commonly, like, just keep it organized. Have a nice organized file system. Okay.
Patrick, one question before we move on, because we do need to move on. When you do revisions, would you create a separate folder to create revisions in? So, keep a copy of the original file, the original drawing, and then have a revision folder, or would you keep it all in the same spot?
I keep it all in the same spot because I want to be able to access all those very easily. Because, how many times have we done revisions on something and somebody says, I'm just going to do what we started doing in the first place? That's what I do. Because that's what works for me. Now, what you can do, though, is if you've done drawings that you just know are never going to be right because they did an addition or something, in that folder, I would create a subfolder called Archives and archive those. Do not ever, ever delete a drawing. Do not ever save over a drawing, because you never know when you need to go back to what you had before. And if you do delete something, like, for example, like a DynaSCAPE drawing file, please at least back that up with a PDF, because there are times where in the heat of the battle I accidentally saved it and I didn't save a new version, but luckily I had a PDF version of it that I was able to import right back into DynaSCAPE and trace what I did in a previous version. So, but everybody's systems are different. I don't work on a network like some of you probably do. Well, not probably. Some of you definitely do, and you all have your own file structure. But you just have to find what's best for you, and just the key here is just try to find the best that works for you. Just don't be complacent and just kind of willy-nilly do it. Like, be conscientious and think, okay, how can I improve what I'm doing? And when you get roadblocks of things that you find are redundant or are slowing you down, stop, figure out how to solve it. If you can't, email somebody who might have a better idea of how to do it, or ask a coworker. There are a lot of times, like, I own my business, but there are several times that I call my designer Neil and say, what do you think? Like, how should I do this or whatever? And he'll have good insight. So you can't solve all your problems on your own. So anyway, that was a really long way of answering a very simple question, so I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So, okay, so this is the most fun part of the whole job. Computers and ergonomics. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm so into this computers and organization stuff. I'm going to briefly go over this really quickly. Buy the right tool for what you're doing. If you don't do 3D modeling, you don't need a 4 gig video card. You don't need an animal of a computer. If you're only doing DynaSCAPE design work, you don't need a monster computer. I used DynaSCAPE as a guinea pig one time on a 10-inch Asus tablet with Windows 8 with like a gig of RAM. Struggled a little bit on some bigger drawings, but it's not really built for that, but it works. So but do your homework, figure out what the best system is for what you're going to use, and then buy up a little bit so you can kind of grow into it. But there's so many things out there, so many different form factors. Like, this is the Surface Pro 4, and this is what I'm doing my webinar on right now. This isn't my exact computer, but that's exactly what it looks like. And I'm telling you, this thing is it's just absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to have it because it's 12.5 inches. This folds, that magnetizes. I can do write-ups over sketches and stuff for customers. And I can throw this in a bag and so easily go to trade shows and hook up monitors to it. It's absolutely wonderful. It handles DynaSCAPE absolutely flawlessly. And I've actually done a little 3D modeling on it. And I actually ran Lumion on it yesterday with a fairly basic model. So pretty darn powerful. So that's like a smaller form factor. This is an Asus ZenBook, 13 inches. This, like, Joe will probably agree with me, this is a sweet spot, and this probably is the most popular, it actually is, it's the most popular size computer people are buying right now because it is such a nice size screen, but it's very, very portable. And this is actually, should I say, Joe, this is the exact computer Joe has, and he absolutely loves it, right?
It is. I'm using that computer right now.
Yeah, so that's a 13-inch computer. Then there's the MacBook Pro. They come at 13 and 15-inch. That's a great size. As you start getting into 15-inch, you start compromising a little bit of your portability if you want to take your computer to job sites or whatever. This is going to start getting into the little bulkier and heavier part. DynaSCAPE works absolutely like butter on a Mac if you're running boot camp. Don't run it on Parallels because there's a little bit of functionality with a couple of keys and functions. But other than that, if someday you want to buy DynaSCAPE software but you hate PCs, don't even worry about it. You're going to be in great shape with a Mac. This is a 17-inch computer. Like, I consider this a hybrid between a laptop and a desktop because it is so ridiculous.
This is your desktop replacement.
It really is. I own two this size, and the last trip I had it, I was standing in a Starbucks with the DynaSCAPE guys, and I was holding it on my arm, and my hand started falling asleep. And I said, that's it. I'm done with these 17-inch computers. And that was before they really started making these smaller systems as powerful as they are anyway. Everybody knows what these are. These are iMacs. I run an iMac. I do all my work on a 5K iMac, and it's the most beautiful screen in existence. But you can still get two different size iMacs if you want. Obviously, you're not going to travel with this thing. And if you do, I hope you save your box and all the foam stuff in it. But if you don't like Mac, there are alternatives to that. There's an Asus all-in-one. Screen is nowhere near the Mac. However, it's a great alternative to a Mac. Gives you that all-in-one experience. It's very nice and clean and organized, so you can do that. And here's my desk. Here's my 5K iMac and my Thunderbolt monitors, and then this is my little Surface Pro, and this is where I'm working right now. So, like, if I get bored working on this, I can spin over and work on this, and I can take this downstairs with me and work at night. And maybe in another webinar we'll talk about syncing with Dropbox, because that really makes or breaks how I do things. So have fun with the computer stuff. That's fun. But keep a nice, tidy workspace. Create an environment where you're excited to go to work and you're excited to sit down, and ask your boss ask for what you want, and put the argument that you're going to benefit from it. So I did want to do one more thing to get into DynaSCAPE, but I think we're probably at a point where I'll wrap it up, and the next webinar I'll get into setting up a prototype in DynaSCAPE where you have a sheet ready for you every time. So I know this is a very busy season. We had, how many registrations do we have for our webinar today, Joe?
We had almost 400 people sign up for the whole 6-part webinar series. So
yeah,
absolutely incredible interest in this webinar series.
So that's awesome. But I also know you guys have other things to do than this. So I want you to be able to get on with your day. Hopefully you have questions that we can help you with. And that's about what I have. So Joe, if you want to kind of take over with some questions or whatever, I'm in good shape.
So there was a couple of questions that had come in and that I was sort of answering in the background. But there's a couple from the beginning that were around site measurements. And Charlene had a question around when clients, when you got measurements from clients, have you ever, when you run into errors and the contractor that was doing the work, did they have to then create a change order, and how is that handled?
Okay.
Have you ever run across that?
Where my drawing was not right?
Yeah, and it was more like the measurements that came from the property owner, not so much the person that was getting information about the site.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to here is what I'm going to suggest about that. So I'm hoping I'm understanding this right, where they did a design for a homeowner that somebody else is going to install, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, you should be sending them a design agreement. And in your design agreement, it says any information given to us, we are not liable for errors based on information we're given. So you're covered, and you need to sign that. So my answer to you is, I'm sorry, it's not my fault. That's really the bottom line. Now, if you're lucky enough to be able to communicate with who they're going to have build the work, and that's probably, I mean, it's not always going to happen, because you might do the design, you've sold it, they're good, thank you very much, and now they're bidding it out to contractors. This is maybe an additional service you could try to sell them, and explain to them, look, I know you've sent me dimensions, I appreciate it, however, I want to make sure that the build process goes as smoothly as possible, and that they estimate it as accurately as possible. So what I'm going to offer you is, please, whoever you decide, please hook us up so I can communicate with them, and before they do an estimate, they can just go verify some things too. Not to say that you don't know how to take dimensions, but there are certain ways that we like to get those things so they're accurate. So to save you some real headache in the future, let me connect with your contractor, and I will be happy to help you make sure that goes much smoother. And they're going to really appreciate that you want to make sure that that goes smoothly, and you're not just in it for the quick dollar. You want to actually make sure that they're happy.
Yeah, I think the lesson there is if you feel like the measurements aren't right or something's missing, work to make sure that you get them even if you have to go do it yourself or send someone else to do it. So I do have another question. Margaret was asking about your Surface Pro, and she was asking, doesn't the DynaSCAPE design need to run with a high-end graphics card? She ended up with a high-end gamer's notebook. So that's not necessarily true. I mean, if you're going to be doing 3D modeling, you absolutely need the dedicated graphics card. We recommend the NVIDIA 2 gig graphics card to be in either your laptop or your desktop. But DynaSCAPE design and color run very well with an integrated card. The more graphics power you have, the better. But the system will run, or DynaSCAPE design and color will run with integrated graphics, and it'll run quite well. By getting yourself something with an integrated card or a dedicated card, you're future-proofing your purchase, meaning that you'll have something that you'll be able to use in the long term.
Perfect. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So that's our questions for today, Patrick. Do you have anything else to add? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, even the integrated cards they're putting in computers now are way ahead of what they were a few years ago. So that's my answer. I shouldn't have even added that on because you did such a brilliant job of answering it.
There you go. Coming up next, our webinar number 2 called Drafting Made Easy. That's going to be next week, same time, and you'll get a reminder about an hour before the webinar goes live with your login information and your call details. And after that one, we do have a follow-up in the series, so then we're getting into the details, and so we're looking at construction documents, doing layout, and being able to do dimensioning drawings and all those kinds of things, and that'll be October 27th on a Thursday, so same day and time, just a couple weeks down the road. Then we're going to get into the presentation, and that'll be November 3rd on a Thursday at 2, and webinar number 5 will be advanced presentation techniques. So we're going to look at doing custom texture work, getting into SketchUp and using Sketch 3D, and how to really take your presentations to the next level. So that's November 10th. And the final webinar, and we're going to look at taking the design and bringing that to create an estimate. And we're going to do that by showing the integration of DynaSCAPE design into Manage 360, cost-based estimating and job tracking. And so that's going to be December 1st. And so this will give you a rundown of our full webinar series. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick, really enjoy the information that you imparted on us today. Thanks so much for your time.
You're
really
welcome.
Appreciate it. If anyone has any questions, I'm Joe Salemi, Product Marketing Manager with DynaSCAPE Software. Here are my contact information. Email is jsalemi@dynascape.com. Our website is dynascape.com, and our phone number is there. Please reach out at any time. Send me an email. Would love to have your feedback. Until next time, everyone, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Patrick.
You're welcome. Thank you.